The year was 1135. England, a land of castles and intrigue, stood on the edge of uncertainty. King Henry I of England, known as the Lion of Justice, lay dying in his chamber, surrounded by anxious advisors and the flicker of candlelight. For decades, he had ruled with an iron fist, bringing order to a turbulent realm and filling the royal treasury with gold. His authority was unquestioned, his word law. But tragedy had struck years before. His only legitimate son, William Adelin, had drowned in the White Ship disaster, a calamity that left Henry with a single heir, his daughter Matilda. England had never known a queen regnant. The barons, powerful and proud, balked at the idea of a woman on the throne, fearing the unknown. Desperate to secure his legacy, Henry forced his barons, including his ambitious nephew Stephen of Blois, to swear loyalty to Matilda as his chosen successor. Oaths were sworn on holy relics, binding in the eyes of God. Yet in the shadows, ambitions simmered, and promises made under pressure were easily broken. On December 1st, 1135, Henry died in Normandy, far from his English subjects. His passing sent shockwaves through the realm. News of his death shattered the fragile peace. Messengers raced across the countryside, spreading word of the king's demise. The barons, unwilling to accept a female ruler, saw their chance to seize power for themselves. The kingdom became a glittering prize, the crown now up for grabs by anyone bold enough to claim it. Instead of a smooth succession, England was plunged into a brutal struggle for power. Rival factions gathered armies, and old alliances crumbled. The stage was set for a war between cousins, Matilda and Stephen, a conflict that would scar the land for a generation. The anarchy had begun, and no one could predict who would emerge victorious. England's fate now hung in the balance, with the crown as the ultimate prize and the future uncertain. The peace of Henry's reign was over. Chaos was about to reign, and the struggle for England's soul had only just begun. With Henry dead, the fate of England hung in the balance, and uncertainty swept through the kingdom like a cold wind. The race for the throne began in earnest, as powerful nobles and ambitious claimants moved swiftly to secure their advantage. Matilda, Henry's only legitimate heir, was stranded in France and heavily pregnant, unable to cross the Channel or rally her supporters in time. Stephen of Blois, seizing the moment, sailed to England with haste. He quickly won the support of London's leaders, who feared Matilda's foreign ties and the uncertainty her rule might bring. Stephen secured the royal treasury, the very heart of the kingdom's wealth. With the help of his brother, the powerful Bishop of Winchester, he persuaded the Archbishop of Canterbury to crown him king, despite the oaths sworn to Matilda. On December 22, 1135, Stephen was crowned King of England in a grand ceremony, his claim bolstered by the Church's blessing. He now held the crown, the treasury, and the support of the Church, but his right to rule rested on broken promises and fragile alliances. The barons were deeply divided. Some backed Stephen, hoping for stability and favor, while others remained loyal to Matilda and the oath they had sworn to her father. England was now a fractured realm, its loyalties split and the threat of civil war looming ever closer, as old friendships turned to suspicion. Matilda, her claim dismissed by the English court, refused to accept defeat. She gathered her strength, determined to fight for her birthright. The barons, with lands and loyalties on both sides of the Channel, faced perilous choices that would shape the fate of England and Normandy alike. The kingdom's unity shattered. Rival courts and armies began to form, each preparing for the conflict to come. Stephen's bold move had won him the throne, but not the peace he so desperately needed to rule. The seeds of conflict were sown, and the land braced itself for the storm that was sure to follow. England teetered on the brink of open war, as armies gathered and old alliances crumbled. The struggle for the crown was just beginning, and the fate of a kingdom would be decided in the chaos to come. For 4 long years, Stephen's rule was plagued by unrest, rebellion, and a growing sense of chaos across the land. The barons, sensing weakness at the heart of the crown, built unauthorized castles and openly defied royal authority, carving out their own fiefdoms. In 1139, Matilda, daughter of Henry I, landed in England with a small but determined force, and her half-brother, Robert of Gloucester, by her side. Her arrival ignited open civil war, splitting the country between rival courts and plunging England into a bitter struggle for the crown. Battles raged across the countryside, towns changed hands overnight, and the fighting grew ever more brutal as loyalties shifted. In 1141, the bloody Battle of Lincoln turned the tide. Stephen was captured and imprisoned, sending shockwaves through the kingdom. Matilda entered London, poised to be crowned queen at last, but her arrogance and disregard for tradition quickly alienated the citizens. Demanding heavy taxes and refusing traditional rights, she was driven from the city in a furious uprising. Her triumph evaporated overnight, replaced by bitter disappointment. The war dragged on, with neither side able to claim victory, and the land itself bearing the scars of endless conflict. The kingdom remained divided, its people caught in the crossfire, suffering as armies marched back and forth. Matilda's moment of glory had become a humiliating retreat, her hopes dashed by the very people she sought to rule. The struggle for the throne was far from over, and the fate of England hung in the balance. England's suffering deepened as the conflict ground on, leaving villages in ruins and families desperate for peace. The promise of peace slipped further away, as hope faded with each passing season of war. The anarchy tightened its grip, casting a long, dark shadow over England's future. Matilda's failed coronation marked a turning point. The barons, ever opportunistic, played both sides for personal gain. Loyalty became a commodity, traded for land, titles, and power. Geoffrey de Mandeville epitomized this era, switching allegiances, terrorizing the countryside, and ruling as a warlord. The kingdom was paralyzed by shifting alliances, armies dissolved overnight as lords changed sides. The war became a chaotic brawl, not a clear contest between two rulers. The feudal system unraveled, and lawlessness spread. Barons built unauthorized castles, minted their own coins, and waged private wars. England became a patchwork of petty tyrannies. The ordinary people suffered most, caught between rival lords and endless violence. The struggle for the crown had unleashed 1,000 smaller wars. The dream of a united kingdom faded into chaos. The collapse of royal authority unleashed horror across England. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle called it 19 long winters when Christ and his saints slept. For commoners, life became a nightmare. Armed gangs roamed, kidnapping and torturing for ransom. Villages were burned, fields left unplowed, and famine stalked the land. Starvation forced people to desperate acts. Even cannibalism was reported. The bonds of society, law, justice, religion, were severed. Neighbors feared each other. Trust vanished. The violence was relentless, the suffering unimaginable. The war for the crown had become a war against civilization itself. The land was haunted by fear and hunger. The anarchy was more than a political crisis. It was a collapse of humanity. The memory of these dark years would linger for generations. England's soul was scarred by the chaos. Even the church was not spared. Monasteries and churches, once sanctuaries, were seized and fortified by warlords. Holy ground was desecrated. Clergy were robbed, tortured, and killed. The church's moral authority crumbled as bishops became political players and Rome's guidance faltered. Many died without last rites, fearing for their souls as much as their lives. The anarchy was a spiritual crisis as well as a political one. It felt as if God himself had abandoned England. The darkness seemed absolute. The war dragged on, with neither Stephen nor Matilda able to claim the kingdom. England became a land without a master. Justice collapsed, and local lords ruled by force. The king's courts were ignored. Disputes were settled with the sword. Trade and agriculture withered. Famine spread, and the economy crumbled. The people lived in fear, their world governed by violence and uncertainty. A generation grew up knowing only war. Brutality and treachery became the norm. The anarchy was not just a political disaster, but a psychological one. The kingdom's spirit was broken. England's long night seemed endless. By the late 1140s, exhaustion gripped England. Matilda left for Normandy, her hopes dashed, but her son Henry Fitz-Empress took up the cause. Stephen, broken by loss and the death of his heir Eustace, saw his support wane. With Eustace gone, peace became possible. Henry, already a powerful French noble, landed in England in 1153 and quickly gained support. The barons, weary of war, rallied to Henry's banner. Stephen and Henry met at the negotiating table, brokered by the church. The Treaty of Winchester ended the war. Stephen would remain king, but Henry would be his heir. The anarchy was over. England could finally begin to heal. The cost had been staggering. A generation was lost to chaos. The kingdom's wounds would take years to mend. The Treaty of Winchester brought peace at last. Stephen died in 1154, and Henry Fitz-Empress became King Henry II. The Plantagenet dynasty began. Ruling England for centuries, Henry inherited a shattered kingdom, illegal castles, empty coffers, and broken laws. He moved swiftly to restore order, destroying unauthorized castles and crushing rebellious barons. Henry reformed the legal system, sending royal judges across the land and establishing common law. The power of the crown was rebuilt and the kingdom slowly healed. The anarchy's legacy was a warning. Without strong leadership, chaos reigned. The memory of 19 long winters haunted England's rulers. Henry's reign brought hope, but the scars of civil war remained. The price of peace had been high. England emerged from darkness, forever changed by the anarchy.